And welcome back, everybody. We are on week 3, day 2. We're going to be continuing our discussion of how to touch grass and what it is. Okay. Um, and we're going to be continuing our discussion of how to do coding inside of Unreal Engine. So last time we did an introduction to blueprints, and we went over how to make a little invisible zone like this where you walk over it and it plays a sound or does something. Today we're going to be talking about touching things. So this is another one of the very fundamental ways you can trigger code in a game. The intro to the video is, in fact, the touch of grass. That is correct. I'm going to use that as my my thumbnail. Thank you for that. So, let's make it so that, when we're working on this game, right, or the soccer game, we're going to kick a ball between the goal here. And so we can make it so that when the ball travels through here, we get a point. And we can also make it maybe if the player touches one of these posts or something like that, they lose a point. So first of all, that means we're going to need a variable to hold our points. And it looks like a two-player game, right? Because we got two different goals there. Multiplayer is actually really annoying to do in Unreal Engine, at least in a first semester class. So we're just going to pretend there's, some other person, but we're just not going to worry about that. So let's introduce a very important concept to you guys, which is if you go to the third-person directory, go to Blueprints, and go to BP third-person character, this is where sort of the main code for your game is, sort of. This is where input is handled, right? So when you look around, it rotates the camera. When you press, forward and backwards, it moves you in a direction. When you hit the jump button, space, right? When you hit space, it does a jump. When you let off space, it stops jumping. So BP third-person character is where I tend to put most of these kinds of things that I need to save. There's also something called the level blueprint and other stuff as well where you can put this. But I am going to say the player herself, I guess that's a female mannequin. The male mannequin, by the way, is called Manny, and the female mannequin is called Quinn. So you have Manny and Quinn mannequin, right? So Ada is going to go, yes. So let's make a variable on the player. So I'm going to click on the little plus here. This is how you can add a variable. And, typically in a video game, you're going to have all sorts of variables on your BP third-person character. I mean, if you're not, assuming you're using the third-person character template, right? If you're in the first-person template, you'd be using the BP first-person character, obviously. So you typically, though, have a lot of variables on your character, like the ammo count. As you're shooting, you might run out of ammo. Health is another thing that we typically will track on a character. But I'm going to just right now make maybe score, and maybe I'll make health, something like that. So I'm going to make a variable here called score, and this will be an integer. Because as I score points, I'll get a point or whatever, right? As the ball goes through the goal, I score a point. And if I touch the goalpost, I'm going to lose a point, all right? And the kicker here is we are going to turn this eyeball open. We're not going to have eyes wide shut. We're going to have eyes wide open. And what this means when you have the eyeball open, that means other things are going to be able to edit this value, okay? So in other words, when I touch the goalpost, which we're going to turn into a blueprint in a second, the goalpost will be able to reach into the player and go poke and decrement the score by 1. So every time you touch that goalpost, it's going to penalize you, okay? And likewise, every time the ball rolls through the end zone, it's going to reach out. Maybe we'll do an end zone class or something like that. When the ball rolls into the goal, the end zone class will reach into the player, look at the score, and add 1 to it. Okay, so that's why we have a public variable here and not a private one. Private variables can only be accessed by you. Okay, only the blueprints in here have access to the private variables. Public variables anybody can poke at, and there's other ways of doing similar things, but this is kind of the simplest way of doing it, so I'm kind of showing it to you. We're going to have a score, and then just for the sake of showing you guys how to make a variable, let's make a health variable as well. Health could be an integer. Integers, again, are whole numbers, 5, 7, 10, -2. But health is usually easier to work with if you make it a float. And the reason for that is because you'll sometimes have things where you like take half damage from fire and things like that. And so 5 damage would become 2 damage if you're working with integers, and it rounds weirdly. Also, if you're like standing in a damage field, it's nice to be able to slowly watch your health like smoothly go down like this. As you're like standing in fire, you want to watch your health kind of smoothly go down. Whereas if it's an integer, it goes chunk, 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 chunk like that. So usually I like using floats for health as well. And this one, I guess I'm going to make public. Compile and save. You have to compile and... I guess you don't have to save, but it's good habit. You have to compile and save in order for the starting value to show up here. So in the bottom right corner of the screen here, you can see it gave us a default value of 0 for our score, which is fine. Our score should start at 0 in most games, right? Like we're doing a little soccer thing here, and in soccer you start with 0, so that makes sense. But our health probably should not start at 0. That would start us off dead, right? And so there are 2 schools of thought on health. Sometimes you have health go from 0 to 1, right? And then 0.5 would be half your life. I personally like working with big numbers, whole numbers, things like that. I like using a health value of 100. It just kind of makes sense to me spiritually and physically, I don't know, philosophically. And so you could do 20 damage to somebody, and then their health would drop from 100 to 80. You don't have to. If you want your health to go from 0 to 1, that's fine. But I typically do health from like 0 to 100. Okay. So we've got this set up on the player. That's all we really need to do right now with the player. Yeah, everything else is going to be kind of like over here on these other things. So let me make a blueprint class. I'm actually going to delete this one here because we're kind of in a one-player game, right? So maybe I'll move this way. It'll be like more like bowling or something. Like you'll start here and you'll like kind of kick it, and maybe if the ball misses, we could lose a point. What do you guys think? Like if you if you're like over here, you know, like what do you guys think? Does that be fun? It's like a little bit of a skill game. You have to like run up and kick it, and then it's like a free throw or free shot simulator. Does that seem nice to you guys? So if it goes between, you get a point. If it goes off to the sides, you lose a point. Slightly more fun, slightly more interesting than... Okay, yeah, let's do that then. Okay, so I'm going to click on shift-click. I click on one, I shift-click on the other. And then I'm going to... can I not make this into Blueprint? Yeah, I can't. Okay, that's fine. I can work with this. So I'm going to take one of the posts and make that into a blueprint. I like actually converting things in the world into blueprints so that I know they're scaled properly, like they kind of are the right size already. Yeah, so I'm going to click on Create Blueprint from this one post here. I'm going to call this guy endzone BP. And I'm going to save this into my build directory. I put all my stuff in my build directory so I can find it. So endzone_BP. And if my build directory gets too crowded, I then make subfolders and have one folder for my sound effects and one for my materials and so on and so forth. So I have this post in here, and that is going to be the root component. This might be annoying. Okay. Well, I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to pull out this guy here, compile, save, and then I check over here. Normally when I'm doing this editing, I actually snap my window like this, and I put it on a different screen. And so I'll be looking at the world over here, and I'm going to be dragging the thing over here. You guys can't see it because it's on a different monitor over here. But I'm moving it around, and I can kind of eyeball it and be like, okay, that looks about right. So come back over here, compile and save again. Give these guys a name if you want. This is the right post. And this one can't be renamed, I don't think. Yeah. The root component's kind of annoying to work with. You can't change its name and stuff like that. You can't move it either. It's basically the reference for the entire thing. So everything else is So everything we add to this blueprint is going to be basically in relation to this post. So when I add a trigger box, I'm going to say put it to the right of the post. When I add a penalty zone, I put it to the left of the post. And so whatever it is you turn into your blueprint is the root component, and that's sometimes annoying to work with. Like if you're trying to do a door or something like that, and you click on the door and make it a blueprint, it can't move. Like you want it to like swing within the frame, but it's the root component. You end up like usually having to start over with just a blank blueprint and making sure it's not the root. Okay, so we want to add a goal zone in between. So we are going to add a collision, a box collision here. The box collision is here. Oh, it's scaled. Oh, that's so annoying. Everything's scaled because this cylinder here was scaled up 2.5 times up, or 2.25 times up. So everything we make gets scaled by the same amount. It's okay. We can fix it in post-production. All right, so we'll just come in here and just widen this out here. And if we look at the world, you can see we now have an end zone. I like to look at it from different angles, make sure it looks about right. Yeah, so the ball, if the ball crosses through that, it's a little bit off the ground, but the ball's not going to be able to scoot under it. That looks pretty good to me. Okay. Maybe if I kick it, it'll go. Maybe I'll make it a little bit taller there, just in case. Okay, so save, file, and now we've got this, and this box collision I'm going to be called the score zone. And then I'm going to just duplicate this a couple times. Control D duplicates, and this will be called the penalty zone. Over here. Do I want to do it? I'm just gonna leave the score zone. I'll just keep it simple for now. Okay. So here we've got our blueprint, and so do you guys remember what it's called? Which event it is that will trigger when something crosses over the score zone, as we're calling it here. Do you guys remember which one of these 3 options it is? Is it begin play? Is it begin overlap? Or is it event tick? Which one is it that will trigger? Remember, these red boxes are the entry points of our code. And there's lots of different ways of doing entry points. We're going to be doing event hit today, where you touch something and lose it. Okay. Overlap is correct. Okay. So do we need anything on begin play? No. Do we need anything on event tick, which runs every frame? No. Maybe we will in the future. We can always bring it back by searching for event tick or whatever, but I don't think we're going to need it. Okay. So event begin, actor begin overlap. Now, the first thing we do always is we just print a string, right? Print string. We're just going to print, not hello, we'll print overlap the end zone or something like that. Compile, save. And so collision settings, overlap settings are one of those. I'm going to move the start location for the player. I'm going to move the start location so I don't have to sit there and run over every time. You can also right click and choose play from here. That works pretty well too. But if I'm going to be messing with this for a while, I'm just going to put up my start location here. Okay. So yeah, if you ever want to spawn in at a certain spot, right click on that spot and choose play from here. That's a great trick. So you don't have to waste all your time running. Okay, so we're going to try this, and there. Nothing happened. But when I walked over it, we got overlap the end zone. Okay? This is why it's important to test these things before you do it. Collision settings and physics settings are highly annoying in Unreal Engine. And if you just have one checkbox that isn't checked properly, nothing happens. And that's literally, it doesn't sound like it's the worst thing that can happen, but it's literally the worst thing that can happen because you do all this coding and just nothing happens. You're like, what's happening? Why is nothing happening here? You got to go click on these things. You got to like look at the physics and look at the collision settings. This thing is set to overlap all dynamic. We will change this to overlap all and see if that fixes anything. Who knows? There could be a problem with the parent. If the parent isn't set properly, then it could be ignoring things there as well. It's like if the parent sets like hide, then the child might be hidden as well. So you have to nothing. See that? But it works for me. All right, so let's come back up to here, and let's see here. Generate overlap events. Has to be checked. There's a lot of options in Unreal Engine, and if you miss something, let's see if that fixes it. It might not be. There's a lot of possibilities for these things not working, and it's one of like it's at the level where I would probably just start over and just make a trigger box if I had to. Nothing. Okay. So let's see if I can see it. Generate hit events. Why not? Oh no, that's the physics simulation. Simulate physics. No, we don't need that. Static mesh is you. Generate overlap events. Collision presets. Let's do. Maybe what I want to do actually is to split the scoring zone into something else. Let's do that. Okay, so for the post, I'm just going to have it touch things. And so I'm going to do event hit on this. We can do the player hitting it first. Event hit. And by the way, this is the annoying thing about Unreal Engine, is that like there's levels and levels of settings that you have to have set properly. And if like somebody somewhere 5 levels of hierarchy up doesn't have a checkbox set, nothing happens. That's why I always start with print string, just to see like, okay, it's triggering on me. It's not triggering on the box. Is it the visibility channel? Maybe I can set the visibility channel on the ball and then it would go off. But I'm actually just not going to deal with it because you'll see in a little bit. So event hit. This is something new. This is actually the point of the lecture today in part. Event hit gets triggered when somebody bumps into it. This is different from overlap. Do you guys understand? Like overlap is when you walk through the region. Hit is when your nose bonks into it. You guys understand? Like when you bounce. You guys got that? Are you guys still here? Make it. We are going to block all. And we're going to generate hit events. And maybe for this guy here, collision presets, we're going to block all as well. Hit events. Okay. All right. Good. So first thing we do, print string. Let's see if this is working. And so we will say bonk. Okay. Compile, save, run. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. I should probably take out that foliage. When I touch it, we get a lot of bonks. You see that? I run into it, infinite bonks. All right. What about the ball over here? Missed. No, come back. Oh, dang it. Yep. Bonk. Okay, there we go. So if the ball touches it, we get a bonk. If we touch it, we get a bonk. So it's working properly. However, we only want to penalize the player if the player herself, Quinn, touches the post. So here is a very important node for you guys to learn. And this is called cast to. And we are going to do cast to BP third person character. And so what this is going to do is the person that hit us is this guy right here, the one that says other. This is the object that is run into us. We are the goalposts right now. And so we want to know, hey, who hit us? We run that into cast to BP third person character, and we get 2 options. Okay. One is, yes, the person that ran into us was the player. The other option was the person who ran into us was not the player. So if I do this, I can do a print string here. and I can say bonked by not the player, and I can duplicate that, and Control D, by the way, is duplicate, and I can say bonked by the player, like that. Okay. And so this will show you guys what, there's two purposes to cast a BP third-person character. First is to know, was the thing that ran into us the main character? The other reason why we do that is because when we pull off this pin here, we have access to its score. And so we can get the score of the player. This object here, the thing that ran into us, is a generic actor. A generic actor does not have a score member variable. The only thing that has a score in the game is a BP third-person character. And so this gives us access to all of the things like health and score that we've made and added specifically to the BP third-person character blueprint class. So if we compile and run this, you'll see that if the ball touches it now, it's going to print bonked, not by the player, not bonked by the player, whatever. And if I can line up the shot right, here we go. Here. Bonked by not the player. And if I run into it, it says bonked by the player. You might notice I'm getting infinite bonks, right? So this would tank my score very quickly, right? And so what I can do is, if you guys remember, we could add like a delay node or something like that, right? And then a delay node would mean, you know, if we delay for like 2 seconds, then for the next 2 seconds, it's going to ignore all touch events. So the player can run into it, and then they have 2 seconds to not get penalized again. They can back off on it. All right, we don't need these print strings anymore. We're good with those. So what we want to do is we want to get their score. This is the score of the player, right? And line them all up. And then we want to subtract 1 from it. So if you drag out from a float, like, or it's actually an integer, like that, and you type the minus key, you will get the option to subtract from it. And so we are going to subtract 1 from the score. And then we are going to set the score. You know the score. We're going to set the score. All right. Maybe. That doesn't look too bad. Okay. So when somebody runs into us, we see if they're the third-person character. If they are, then we set their score to be their current score minus 1. So these blueprints work as sort of a visual coding metaphor. And so you can just follow the lines and say, okay, we're going to first see if they're the character. If they are, then we are going to set their score. What is the score going to be set to? Their current score minus 1. So every time they bonk it, they lose a point. And then we can print their score too. Print string. Just so we know what the current score is. We just drag that across. It'll convert it automatically using this little thing here. And so it's going to print their current score. And then we can do a delay node to stop the score from vanishing at 100 frames a second. So we save that, compile it, save it, run it. And then I'm going to go up and run myself into the end zone. And ooh, it is not delaying properly. So my score is tanking, absolutely. Let's do a... Let's try that. See if that makes a difference. -1. It's not printing -2. Right? So there we go. So we can lose 1 point every 2 seconds. And if we kick the ball into the thing, you notice no point changes. Okay, so that's working. Let's see what we can do here. I should change it to a run once. No, delay reset. Let's do once. Make this a little bit nicer. See if this works a little better. There. So you see, the problem that I had before is with the delay 2, it would pause for 2 seconds, then say you've lost a point. Now you lose the point immediately, but then it waits 2 seconds before it can trigger it again. So what's happening here is there's something called a do once node. And once you've run it, it will not activate again ever until that reset thing gets hit. And so that reset thing is coming out of this delay node. So what happens is it immediately reduces the score, it immediately prints it, then it waits 2 seconds, and then resets the do once so that it can activate again a second time. And this wire is kind of crazy and out of the way. If you double click on a wire, by the way, you can get what's called a reroute node like this. And you use these things to sort of do cable management and get everything kind of looking pretty, or as pretty as you can make it. Drag these things around. Make it look nice. Yeah, it's not too bad. So you can see it runs the do once. One time it'll reduce your score, prints your new score. Later on, we're going to replace this with like a GUI. We can have like a health bar or a point score or something like that that's on the screen so you can see your current points. For now, we're just printing it to the screen. We do this a lot in development. Where you just print something, and then you come back in and do something more professional later. It's called placeholder code. There's placeholder art. There's placeholder everything in game dev. Okay. So we've got here a working thing that when you touch it, it checks to see if you're the player. If you are the player, then one time it'll reduce your score by 1. Wait for 2 seconds, and then re-enable the score reduction again. Now we're going to add another blueprint for the scoring. So for this one, I'm going to come to the trigger box here. And like I said, I kind of like doing it from the world. It's not maybe the best habit that I have because any scaling you do here is going to be scaled. Everything you put inside of the blueprint, like you saw, gets scaled as well. But I like just being able to kind of visually drag and drop everything inside of the world and just make sure that that end zone looks about right. You know, maybe I'll kick it a little bit here. And I don't think the ball can get through that crack or that crack. But I still maybe widen it just. So it looks nice to me. And I'll maybe make it a little bit taller. Okay. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make this guy a end zone blueprint. End zone BP already exists. That's fair. That's actually what I called the goalposts, huh? End zone goal BP. How about that? Okay. Looks good. See, when you're in this viewport, it's really nice. Like you can add things to it. Like you could add like a particle effect. Now you're a particle system component, and you come in here and like pick a. Which I haven't made any yet. Oh. You can add point lights or whatever. You know, but the trouble is like you have trouble like kind of like visualizing like how big is this? Like how large? Like this looks colossal, right? Like how big is this going to be in my scene? You know, whereas here you can see it's a fairly small light, you know, it's just glowing a little bit, you know. So that's why I kind of like doing things out in the editor and then turning them into blueprints, just because there's no sense of scale here, because you don't have references from all the other objects near you. Make the light, maybe we'll make the light like purple. Yeah, there you go. So we have this like glowing purple area here. Why not? Why not? Okay, so the point is, for the end zone goal, if the ball overlaps the end zone, we give the player a point. So, begin overlap. How do we check to see if this person here, this is the person that's overlapping us, how do we check to see if this person is the ball? It's going to be very similar to how we check to see if the person that touched the post was the player. How do I check to see if the person that is inside of our goal right now is in fact the ball? Because we only want to give points if it's the ball that crosses the end zone and not the player. What do you guys think? What's the name of the node? To convert one actor into a different type. We were just looking at 5 minutes ago. Watana? Kiana, do you remember? It's called Cast 2. Okay. And the ball is called My Ball BP. And so this is going to try to convert anything that walks into this goal zone area. It's going to try and convert it into a ball. If it fails, like if the player walks into it, then we do nothing. Right? We just don't have anything here. But if it is the ball, then we can do something like add a point to the player. Okay. So if it is, we're just going to do what we always do: take over the world. No, sorry. Print a string. And we're going to say goal World Cup. All right. Yeah. All right, so we're going to kick the ball in over here. Hopefully. There we go. Oh, nothing happened. Oh, dear. Okay. All right. So same problem we had before. Collision presets, overlap, all dynamic. Generate overlap events. During level streaming. Let's try that. We're doing the same problem where the physics objects are not causing the overlap event to trigger. Missed. Interesting. Physical. Let's see if it works on the player. Yeah, so let's just double check that first. Print string. And we'll just leave it as hello. We could feasibly update the ball as well. So let's see here. So we're getting a hello there. And then let's kick the ball in and make sure it's not just not casting properly. No, it's just not triggering a overlap event on a physics object. So somewhere in there, there's a setting I need to set. Let me double check one thing. Okay, yeah, so the problem was with the ball. All right, so the ball, this is one of those things where you have to check these things. The ball had generate overlap events turned off. And so because the ball had overlap events turned off, then when it went through the overlap region, it did not generate an overlap event. So turning that on, there you go. So if we run the game now, you will see that when we kick the ball through the goal, if I can line it up right, is there. So we got a goal. All right. Neat. So we've got our goal code here, and then if the player walks through, it'll say hello, so we can just take that out. And so what we want is when the ball goes through the goal, we want to reach into the player's member variables, its score, and increase its score by 1. Now, with this guy here, we had the ability, we have the person right here. So we just drag off the person and choose get its score, subtract 1, set its score. Here, we don't have the person anywhere. This is the ball, right? So what we need to do is get the player. Unfortunately, there is, especially in single-player games, there is a function called getPlayerPawn, and this basically returns the first player, which is the only player in the game. And this is a generic thing, so this thing needs to get cast to third-person character as well. This time we're not checking to see if it is the player. We just have to do this because this blue thing here doesn't know anything about health and score and stuff like that. It's a generic pawn. This thing here does. And so we are going to get the score. We are going to hit plus, and we're going to increment it. And that will, so when the ball goes in, it's going to print goalie. And then we grab the player and increment their score by 1. And print it. Why not? Print string. Like I said, later on, we'll do like a GUI or something like that. And have something a little more professional looking. This is just placeholder for now. Because the point of today is getting collision working, getting overlap working, and casting 2 things. So you can see when the ball hit that thing, I didn't lose a point. But when it went through there, I did score a point. Now if I touch it, I lose a point. If I touch it, I lose a point. If I touch it, I lose a point. Kick it. Goal. All right. It's kind of fun. I don't know. 2 points. All right. So it's already like a workable game. Now the last thing we're going to do is have a penalty zone off to the side. So if you missed your shot, then you're toast, right? So I'm going to come into the build folder here, and the end zone BP goal, I'm going to control D. That D is for duplicate, and I'm going to change this to end zone penalty BP. Save, and I'm going to drag that guy out here, and this person. Maybe I'll have the goal be green light. That could be cool. Right, so maybe the area you're supposed to score in, our point light here, maybe that'll be like a bright green. And then for the, yeah, that looks good. And then for the penalty zone, we could use like a bright red or something like that. It's like, don't hit it here. So go right to the viewpoint here, and click on the point light here, make it like a bright red kind of color. Compile, save. Yeah, so you can see this area is lit green. The area in here is green. Over here is red. And then I'm going to Alt-Shift-Drag, which makes a duplicate. And I'm actually going to scale this out a bit wider. So you got more area to miss the shot over here. Same thing over here. I'm just going to scale it out a little bit. So if the ball flies wide, we're going to catch it. And so if we go into the end zone penalty BP, the code's going to be very similar, right? If the ball overlaps the end zone, the penalty zone, we're going to say out of bounds. And then we're going to grab the player pawn. We're going to convert them to a BP third-person character. Instead of incrementing their score, though, I am going to decrement their score, which means their score goes down by 1. And then print their new points. And that is, I think, what we have to cover for today. Let's just test it and make sure it works. Yeah, I don't have the ball there. Crosses over there. -1 points. Out of bounds. Kick it back. Out of bounds. -2 points. Why is that thing spawning like -3 out of bounds? It's like spawning in like midair now. What the heck is going on with that? Wait, where's the ball? Did I move the ball? Must have. Alright. Outliner, ball. Double click. Where's the ball? I see the shadow of it. Oh, I am the ball. I'm piloting the ball right now. That's why. Okay. I see. Okay, let's not do this anymore. Okay. It's like, I am the ball. All right. Drop it on the ground, and then fly it back to here. And then the player will spawn right behind it. And I get a point. Once the ball rolls far enough, it will reset. I can kick it over. There, -1 points. Goal. All right, so game's working. You see I got these red lights. Oh, the red lights aren't drawing. You see that? Like when you hit play, like these lights aren't playing. You see that? And they're not showing up. And this is actually what I was referring to earlier. If your parent is invisible, then you're invisible. And this is something you have to learn to deal with in Unreal Engine, is what's called a parent-child relationship. So everything that's on the parent applies to the child. What are on the children don't necessarily apply to the parent. So in the editor, you can see the boxes, but when you're in the game, these things are set to hide themselves in the game. And so because the trigger box hides itself in the game, the light that's attached to it hides itself also. And so we don't actually see the red and green lights as a result of that. So we can just kind of come in here and delete these, I guess. There's no real point to them. Don't give me false hope. And that's one of the problems with making a trigger box as the parent, is because it's invisible. So if you wanted to do this the proper way, then what you do is you would right-click. Let's get out of the way. Right-click, new blueprint class, actor. Actor is your generic thing, and I'll call this penalty, in-zone penalty 2 _ BP. And see, now I have no concept of scale, right? So if I add a collision, box collision in here, the default scene root is now not the box. And so I can attach a light to it, point light to it, and sure, why not? And I can make this one red, and then the box here is the box, and I can just come into my in-zone penalty, copy all of you, check my settings for collision on here, generate overlap, generate hit, overlap all dynamic. I want to do overlap all, why not? Compile, go into here, and paste. And then I'm going to delete this guy, and I'm going to drag out my new one, which has to be scaled up now. But it's red, yay, okay, all right, so up here, make it wider. That's pretty good. Delete this one. Alt, Shift, drag over here. Now if I play the game, now you can see the red lights are there. And the reason for that is because the red lights are now parented to the default scene root, which is like some non-existent thing. Whereas before, with the in-zone goal thing here, the box trigger is actually the root component. And so since the box trigger is always going to be invisible, you don't want it drawing. You can actually choose to draw it if you want the light to appear. But then you'll have this weird looking box in your goal, which you don't want. So now in the world, we actually see the red glow. But what would be kind of cool is why don't we turn the light on only when they get a penalty? That'd be kind of cool, right? It's like when the ball goes through, it just flashes red for a second, you know? That would be neat. So let's go through here. So the point light, we are going to start with it being invisible. Compile, save. It's not in the world anymore. And then what we want is when they score, we are going to set visible. We can probably do this. We can drag the point light onto here. And then we can drag from here and say set visible, maybe. Set visibility. Is that right? Maybe. There's a couple different similarly named things. Let's try that. See if that works. So by default, that light is not visible. And we kick the ball through the penalty zone. The light turns on. Cool. What do you guys think? It's like a pinball machine, you know, when the ball enters a certain area, it lights up. What do you guys think? You like that? Should it turn off after a little while? Yeah, I think so too. So maybe delay for 2 seconds. So any of the components you have up here in your blueprint, you know, you got your trigger zone, I got a light, you can add there's a lot of things. You can add a mannequin to it. I don't know, it's picking something here. Let's add Manny. Manny's just in there now. I don't know why. Like you can build a blueprint with as many components to it as you want. And now he is going to be absolutely colossal. Look at this. Look at this chalky fellow here. Right? Animation mode. We'll use an animation asset. We'll have him. Is it going to crash? Oh no. Oh no. It's going to crash. Nope, it didn't crash. All right. We'll have it. I don't know what's happening. Okay. Looping, playing. Idle. I'll do the idle animation. There, that looks a little better. All right, Annie. Why not? The point is you can add as many components to one of these blueprints as you want. Here we've got a zone, we got a point light, we got a mannequin that's just going to be kind of like hanging out as a giant floating above the end zone. And then we can say, okay, delay for 2 seconds, and then we can set the visibility again on it. So we'll set its visibility to false and turn it off. But all of these things, any component you have, you can just drag them out, and you can do like, I don't know, like, you know, set an animation for it to play, things like that. It's like maybe when you score a goal, the mannequin starts doing a chicken dance or something. I don't know. The sky's the limit on these things, right? So here we go. Go through here. And it lights up. There you go. And that's, I think, enough college for one day. All right. So it lights up for 2 seconds and then clears. So now that we've had 2 lectures on blueprints, you are going to be given your first blueprint homework. It'll be due on Tuesday. And it looks like a weird Iron Man game. Yeah, it was just like when Iron Man... It's like Fat Thor, you know, from the Avengers, except Iron Man, you know. Maybe it's like the Hulkbuster, if we're being charitable to it. It's not quite paper thin. Like, it actually has some thickness to it. I mean, it definitely has thickness, you know, but like... I'm sorry, this is too funny for me. Let's see if there's any See if there's any animations that would be hilarious. That'd be kind of funny. Yeah. Kind of funny. The Iron Man we have at home, exactly. There you go. That's. I think it's kind of funny, right? What do you guys think? Game dev is fun. It's fun. Yeah, this is bootleg Iron Man soccer. So if you shoot the goal and it goes underneath Iron Man's legs and you see the red light light up, you lose a point. But if you can get it between the posts here, then you get a point. And again, if you touch it, you lose a point too. So that's enough game dev for one day. So hope you guys had fun coming out here. You're gonna have to do a blueprint using at least 3 of the entry points: tick, begin play, overlap, and hit. And do something cool. Play a sound. Do a particle effect. Have Hulkbuster, Iron Man dance. I don't know. Like there's all sorts of fun things you could do. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday. All right. Peace out.